Huh. YouTube's always doing something different. And they decided to like put those notifications at the beginning of every time I do a live feed. So I always like am rushing to get everything together, and then I reach back and I push go live and I start talking, and I then realize that it's not recording every time. So damn it. I had to switch the bulb out in this, and it turns out I got a bulb that's too big. It's like too long. So now that won't go back on it. Yeah, welcome back to Tree Talk. Who all do we have? What's up, Jeffrey? How you been, brother? Kellen, what's going on? Long time no see. Yeah, how you been, brother? Ah, John's here. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, now just chilling. Not doing a whole lot here. Trying to fix the lighting issue when we do these live feeds. And I guess it's a little better, but not much. Let me see if I can do something here. See how that is. How was that? It's bright for me, but it should be lit up enough for you guys. So let's go with that. I'm gonna move you guys a little closer because the lights are all right behind you guys, and I can barely see it. I'm getting blinded. I'm gonna have to do something with this light. It's too much. I mean, just a second. I'm sorry. Always gotta be doing something stupid. So what we'll do is something like that. Let's see if that works. How is that for lighting? A lot of shadow, but it's what I got. Actually, I may kill that light. Or just point it straight up. And use this. Let's see if this helps any. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, that'll work. I'm sorry, guys. James, what's going on, brother? I'm stoked you're here, John. That's awesome. I'm glad they at least sent you a notification for once. My live feeds have been a bit spur of the moment. I could do a little better on like setting them up and letting everybody know. But like I said on the last one, I'm at that go between. Like I want to keep doing these live feeds, but it's got to be worth it, you know. I don't know. They usually are, so that's the reason I'm here. It's been got myself a new little one. Oh, congrats, brother! That is so awesome. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. I love hearing that. Nowadays, I feel like family's not as important to people, and that's like a big disconnect for me with nowadays with most people. And you know, the teenagers are everyone's gonna be single their whole life, and you know how it's like. I have a teen right now. Mine just went to prom and did all that fun stuff. So, but that's so awesome. Now I was thinking it was looking all right either way. You got it. Oh, right on, brother. Thank you. So I appreciate it, John. So what we'll do here, I said in the last one, I'm gonna start these out with a tip or trick. That way, if you're the type of person that's only showing up to try to learn some stuff, and I understand that, then I'm gonna put the tip or trick at the beginning of the live feeds always. A lot of times it'll be maybe more than one little trick or tip, and that way, if you don't want to sit here and chit chat with me and and hang out, you can you can get the little bit of a, like, a little tip or trick, something that maybe helps you, or you learn something new, or just my way of sharing. And you don't have to subscribe, you don't have to like the videos, you don't have to do none of that stuff. So I don't want to be like, okay, here's a little gold nugget that's going to be in this video, but you got to wait through an hour and a half or 2 hours worth of video and find it. And if you click off, you're going to miss it. So I don't want to force people to watch. It's just, I have a different opinion about the way YouTube is going, my channel, all that stuff. But that's a topic for a different discussion. Let's do the tip or trick. Alright, so who all we have here right now? We have 5. John, we got James, we got Little Mechanic, and I think I seen maybe Jeffrey was at the top. Yeah, Jeffrey. So, and then we got somebody who just doesn't want to talk, and that's fine. So here we go. Tip or trick. So, I'm going to explain to you span rigging and double whip. I put a short out just this week where I showed how to double whip, and I think it was just a clip of the action of it. So I'm going to do some explaining, like explain why those two techniques are so incredibly similar and why they kind of go hand in hand, and explain a little more of why you would use that kind of technique. And then I think I hit some, oh yeah, and I found myself just the other day when I was removing a tree, to where I got to a limb and I needed to get myself like a tagline. That's just what I needed. It was a real tight spot to lower down, and what I needed was to get a tagline so that we could get it to the fence and then grab the tagline and pull it into the area. It was almost like you could get the tip of the limb down there, but then it was just almost not enough, and they couldn't control it, and there was, they'd be scraping stuff. So here's what I did. You can do this with pretty much any setup, because you have to use a rope to rig. This doesn't matter if you're using a pulley, I don't know where I should put that. Whatever. Right here. So, this doesn't matter if you're using... See, it just makes it look confusing if I keep it there, though. If somebody clicks on right now, they'd be like, what the hell is that setup? So, doesn't matter if you're using a pulley. It doesn't matter if you're using a ring. And this doesn't matter if you're using natural crotch, which we'll get that little display out. Hopefully that'll be enough to do what I need here. There's my guy. What's up, Billy? All right. So what was happening is, we were rigging limbs down, and they were getting real close. We needed to be able to make things a little easier so the guys weren't having to scrape it across the top of the fence, take a chance in hitting little things. The wires were close, stuff like that. So we were rigging like this originally. Go down. I'm sure I got a piece of wood or something here. And we were clipping off like this, just straight rigging chunks, limbs, whatever. So we were hooked up like this. I should probably move this. There we go. All right. So we were rigging chunks like that, and they would get down, and the guys were having trouble getting it away from the tree and out to where we needed. So I wonder if I should give you guys a little different angle. All right. So what I need is a tagline. What I could have done is I could have called down. I could have said, hey, can you go grab me another rope? Can you go grab me another rope? That would have took a while to go dig it out. Then I would have had an additional rope that I was having to connect, disconnect over and over and over. So, well, here's what I ended up doing. So we rigged that piece down. They pulled my rope up to me. It comes back up. So I went ahead and took my termination knot out of the end. I figured the distance that I would need in rope, and you need to figure the limb. So we were rigging limbs. They were probably 10 to 15 feet. Like, they were quite a bit more than that. Some of them, like maybe let's say 20. So 20-foot long limbs. So you'd need 20 foot, okay, and then maybe an additional 5 foot. So let's say I pulled out 25 foot. Then I went ahead and I slapped a midline knot. You could use an alpine butterfly, or you could use a circus knot, which is the one I prefer. So I put the knot in, and then what we were doing, you would dress your knot completely real good, get it set up. If you don't like that like droopy slack in it, you could have like girthed that on by putting it, you know, through over the top, and it would have used a little bit more of the rope up, so you don't have as much of a silly like loop there to get a hold of. So then you end up like that. So what we were doing is we were just taking the pieces then, and we were hooking them up same way, but you disregard this chunk of rope. So we were hooking up, and we were rigging out pieces like this. So what was happening is this, the piece was hooked up, we were rigging them down, and the guys had an additional, 10 foot of rope, 8 foot, and they could grab a hold of that and lead it away, and you're all set up on one singular rope. Keeps you from having to go get more rope. And a lot of times you don't need a whole bunch of the rope, so you can use that, the one rope instead of needing two. Because a lot of times having another huge rope strode out all across the yard and having to pull that rope up repeatedly gets aggravating. So set it up like that, and you could do this and hook on multiple limbs if you wanted. You could put another one of them knots like right down here. So, and you could hook them up and span them down. Just use a bunch of little midline knots and hook on the one above. Then next one, hook on the piece above. And you could rig multiple limbs out like that, and it becomes really easy. I would just recommend using a circus knot or alpine butterfly, because it's going to be much easier to untie. With the circus knot, you can see the locks. You just give them a little pull, and then they come out really easy. So that circus knot, for those that do want to learn, there's 3 wraps on your hand, okay? And then lift up number 2, grab number 1, then grab number 3, then grab number 1. Grab it, pull it down, dress it out. And it is my favorite knot by far, and it's, in my opinion, the best knot. Like, I use this knot more than I use a bolt one. So maybe that's just me, but I do. Now I'm going to read some comments and answer any questions if anybody has any on that, and then we'll go on to the span rigging, double whip rigging, and I'll do some explaining as far as how that goes. Billy, you been taking some of them old man naps? That's awesome. I can't take a nap. I wake up so grumpy and like more tired, and I can't do it. Sometimes it sounds so good though. Oh, Peter, what's going on, brother? Steel cutting, how you been, man? Dan K, we're getting the crew in here. That is awesome. Oh, nothing. I just showed a little trick on being able to take your regular rigging line and make it into a rigging line and a tagline in one, by setting up a midline knot and always remembering to connect your terminal to the rope going up to the rigging device. If you make the mistake and hook down here, that's gonna go slip. So it doesn't work. You have to clip to the end that's that tension. So, but that's the only thing. I mean, you wouldn't even have to use. You could use this, and if you were doing chunks of wood, you wouldn't even need a carabiner. You could go like that, put it over the chunk of wood, cinch it down, and then keep going repeatedly. So you would just make a girth on it, hook it on. But yeah, it's a neat little trick to have for for just doing any kind of rigging. If it was natural crotch, if it was rigging rings, it wouldn't matter. That works with all of them, and you're always going to have a rope. If you're rigging, you're using a rope. That rope, as long as you got an additional, I don't know, 20 foot or more sometimes, you just want to make your tagline where where you lift up rope, and you need to make sure that this, where they're going to use the tag, is longer than the limb. So if you made this and then you rigged a limb that's 5 feet longer, the limb's going to be down there and this is still going to be up in the air. So you have to remember, this needs to end up being longer than the limb. That's the only thing you need to know. Slap yourself a midline knot and then always rig and hook up. Does that make sense? Um, it's something very simple, and I've always used it, but I never really talked about it. But then the other day I was using it, and I was like, oh, that's a cool little trick. That's something I don't really see people talk about, or I don't think I've ever really discussed. And there's so many of those little things, and I think that's what I'm going to use the beginning of every live feed to do and to discuss. If somebody has a topic they would like for me to go into, like if you're having issues wearing spikes or saddles or, climbing in general, rope walking, SRT, getting started, laying your position. There's so many different things. If you do have a topic like that and there's something you'd want me to maybe give you some pointers on, please leave it in the comments. That's the only way I would know. A lot of times I'm searching for ideas, and if you guys give me one, that's that's awesome. I would rather do something like that, because sometimes I feel like I'm teaching things and sharing things that have already been shared by a billion people and nobody really cares. So yeah, I got an issue with my legs hurting, man. Legs hurting, huh? Yeah, I have two blown out knees. My knees are completely shot. This leg, you probably just heard that loud pop. It goes in and out of place. Like every time I bend my knee to here, it goes out of place. I have to straighten my leg out and go all the way straight, and it'll go pow, go back in. This one is totally shot and swelled. It's swelled up. It's just like held together with arthritis. But I get the leg thing. I use, if I'm going to be wearing spikes, I pad my legs, if I know I'm going to be wearing them for a little bit, because it's going to hurt my legs later on if I don't. So I have some like real thick ace bandages, and I'll wrap my calves up and stuff before I start. Um, then I soak in a hot tub every night, Epsom salt, that Dr. Teal stuff. I use all that kind of stuff, and I take a lot of ibuprofen. Probably not the best for me, but it's better than the stuff I used to take. So, but yeah, the leg thing's a rough one, brother. And my opinion, like your body, and especially if you have leg problems, your legs, they're like a piece, like a tool that you leave out in the rain. Um, if you was to go out there and continue to use that tool daily, you could leave it out in the rain. It's going to be all right. It's going to continue to work, and it will very slowly start to fall apart. If you leave that tool out there and rarely use it, when you go to use it, it won't work properly. It's rusted. It's locked up, and I feel like my body. I kind of compare my body to that, and I just don't let it stop. I try to do things to keep me very like stretched out, and I stress my body a lot so that it doesn't get, I feel like it doesn't get weak if I do that. So I do a lot of things. I skateboard. I'll like I work a reflex bag a lot and just sparring with it. And I'm sure there's other stuff I do, but I just work a lot. So my legs hurt. I got a hot tub, man. That's where I'm at, waiting for some of those fish burgers from GP. Right on. I had a big pine tree burger before I came out. My body is like Rice Krispie, snap, crackle, and pop. Yeah, me too, brother. The popping and snapping. I've had osteoarthritis since I was like 18. So I regularly keep ibuprofen in my system. I take it at least 3 times a day. I probably take way too much. I take like 200 milligrams at a time. Well, I take 6 in the morning. Then sometimes I don't take any in the middle of the day. Sometimes I do. I'll take like 4, and then I take 6 at night. So I'm sure that's way too many, and people will say I'm gonna kill over. But I used to take even more. So all right, let's do let's do span rigging double whip. Like, is there, like, what are they? What's the purpose? And why do I think that they're so similar and they're almost the same thing in my opinion? Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody can tell me different, please do. But I'm gonna give you my explanation of it, and if you guys have anything extra, please feel free to jump in and say your piece. So, oh shoot, what I got here is a different display. Basically the same thing almost. Where do I got room at? Okay. I'll go right here. Shoot. Is that even in the camera? A little bit. Let's do this. How is that? Are we in there? Like swimwear? Cool. Okay. So, here's what we got. Now, double whip, I want to show you second. But I want to show you span rigging first, because after I explain span rigging, it's all going to correlate and kind of transfer over to using double whip. So, if we were about to start doing some rigging here, let's do this this one here. So when you're span rigging is rigging off of a span, an area between 2 points. So you have your rigging point out here. Try to hide that back there so it's not so like in our face. Looking weird. Okay, so you have your rigging point out here. Then you don't have to have 2 rigging points with this. You will want to have like a strap, or you can do this with rings. So if I was going to work this side, I would always anchor when I'm doing the span rigging as close as I can to where I'm going to be cutting, because sometimes you have to undo and redo, like connect it over and over. So depending on what you're using to control the span. So rope comes up, goes through the pulley and over to here where it gets anchored. for gas. What's going on? Okay, so now why that looks so weird. No, there it flipped. Okay. So you would anchor one end and have the rigging point on a different end. So here's our span. This is where we're going to rig from. Now, if I was to want, okay, now when this piece comes down, it's going to come down in between these 2 points. So down, it's going to come down in here. If these 2 points are perpendicular, they're like even with each other in height, it will go down in the middle between the 2. Now, if one of the 2 is higher or lower than the other, it's going to change the direction of where this piece goes. So, if we want the piece to go down the center, down here, we would make this the low side. If we want it to go over to here, we would make this the low side. Because it's going to drift to the low end. This one's going to, the high end is going to force it to drift to the low end. So, just for the sake of keeping it clean the first time here, I want to show you how you could set this up. Now, I don't mind using speedline straps when I'm span rigging on a span that is, I'd say, over 10 foot of distance. I don't mind, because it's gonna make a sharp bend radius in the rope. So if these 2 are really close together, it's gonna make a really sharp bend radius because of the carabiner. If they're apart, the 2 lines are gonna stay apart a little bit. So wrap that up a couple times. We don't got so much strap. You would have the piece on here. You would hook your strap onto it, and then clip your carabiner in the middle of the span. So now, as you cut that piece, it comes off, drops into the span. Let me get over here out of the way. And you'll lower it down, and you'll notice, see where it drifted? See how it drifted over there? That's because that's the low end. So also you can see with this, look at the bend radius isn't that bad because of the angles here, from this to this to this to this. So I don't much mind using, I prefer to use these because they're much faster. So I don't mind these when I'm doing span rigging. It works really, really good. Now, if we were to change this and move over to here, and we were going to do double whip, we're going to use this same setup, exact same setup, but we're going to use it on a single stem. And I'll show you some of the things you want to watch out for. The reason you would use a setup like this is mainly because you want to have a stronger rigging setup. You're sharing the load between these 2. You're putting a compression into this limb because it's actually pulling it this way, as opposed to if you were just rigging off of this limb, you would be pulling it down that way. So you share the load, and you get yourself a better lowering point, is usually the reason I end up using them. But if you need to, sometimes you can just make a stronger rigging setup by sharing the load here. Also, when you introduce more rope into the initial drop, it's going to stretch. It's going to absorb some shock load. So that's why having that extra rope into the system makes the system somewhat stronger. So let me kind of check the comments, because I don't want to get too far behind on those. Oh, cool. There is none. Thanks, Billy. Billy says cool. All right, now double whip rigging. We don't need to have that one in the frame this time, so let's just go up close with this one. Sweet. There we go. I like that. All right, you guys here? You ready? Okay. Now we want to span rig off, or we want to use this span rigging technique. We're gonna use double whip. This is where I will switch over and use this. When we set this up, I'll show you how it would be if we were using a speed line strap. And then I'll explain to you, you got to do some things when you use either a rig and ring or a pulley. I'll show you, we'll use the pulley this time on the actual, well, no we won't. I'm going to set it up just like I got set up over here. So will give me just a second to get this undone. First we'll move over the pulley, and set it up. So here's how I normally do it. Depending on, I try to offset a little bit, like say my bollard was here. I wouldn't set this right above it. What I would do is I try to get a little off to the side. So I would probably, if I was setting up here and I knew I was going to use it, I would move my bollard over to here. And there's a reason kind of for that. But it'll keep the pieces when they come down from smashing into the bollard as they lower it. But you can keep from doing that by just being careful. So just for the sake of getting it good and tight on this, we're going to go around twice. It doesn't start sliding all over the place. Why is it always got to be like right at the limit where I could almost get into that pocket? Okay, we're going to. Okay, so okay, so we're set up now. We would have a normal rigging setup right here. If we run off of this pulley, it would go down to a bollard, and we would rig chunks off simply that. So now if we were going to double whip here, all we really do is anchor this into the line. We're going to go around. And I'll just put a running bowline. Just a little bit, and then we would move it. Let's see, did I put that on the right way? I should have actually wrapped the other way. Give me just a second. I want to explain to you why too. A lot of times when I do this, I would put a carabiner on the end of this and just do it that way, but how was I? I would go around this other way for the sake of everything. Like if you were on a really straight pole, you want this side to be biting instead of able to pull together. So now with this setup, I would take this and a lot of times I would tie it above it for the sake of like doing it quicker and easier so I don't have the ropes and stuff in my way. But for this, we're just going to put it right below it. Put it on the side so when it pulls together, it makes the thing bite. If you put it up above, it's probably smarter because this will help kind of hold it and keep it from having the ability to slide off. But you're basically set up for span rig or for double whip now. So you're going to rig off of this span right here in between these 2 points. It's just now you're rigging off of a singular limb, a singular section. So you've spread it out from one side to the other. So you do that to kind of make the bend radius better, keep things from clunking together, ropes from rubbing. I always go one on one side, one on completely on the other, and try to set up like that. You could, like I was saying earlier, use a speed line strap. It's going to end up making a very sharp bend radius, and usually you're rigging much heavier when you're doing this, but it flops down into the system, and it's a span rig, basically. So the only difference is if you were using a ring. Now let's set it up once for double whip on top, and I'll probably end this after that, but let's do this. I want to go ahead and keep a beaner on this so that I can set it up quick and easy, especially because I'm going to be using, or use a shackle or a quickie link, whatever it is you want to use. But I'm going to be using an X-ring each time. It's not midline attachable, so you could make this probably more efficient by switching the ring and the pulley out. The pulley can open up and would be able to connect to the middle of the span over and over and over really quick. The ring not as much, but it will be just as quick and much stronger and safer than the other one. If you just have yourself a connection point, you would throw it around. If you wanted to take 2 wraps, you could. That would keep it from ever being able to slip. You know, it's just you use more rope up is all you're doing, and it's more to do and untie, but you could do it. I'll show you. Let's put 2 wraps in there. Hook the beaner up right. So same as last time, we've displaced it on one on each side of the log. One over here, one over here. So the issue is I hooked that up and I shouldn't have. I should have put the ring on. That's the problem. But when you got a clip like this, it makes it pretty easy. But you know what? You're gonna have to untie your knot every time, which I wasn't thinking. If you had a sewn eye, you could do it really quick. But if you're doing chunks of wood, a lot of times you can just slide this system down and set it up that way. So you would go ahead and it would be hooked onto your piece up here. You would already hooked it up. Had your ring hanging down there. It's ready. Let's go through it. So you're not. Take it around. Flip your beaner on. I'm only going to do one wrap. So I have to pull a bunch of damn rope through. Okay. So we just hook it up with one wrap. But now we're hooked up with an X-ring and we are ready to span rig. Or now we call it double whip. Now this, in my opinion, is much better, much safer. I prefer this way, using a ring or pulley, solely because of how nice it is on the bend radius. It actually, when you're using the ring, adds an extra little bit of friction here, which is nice. I would normally use this little sling that I have. That's like a little green rope. It's like some 9/16 10X with a ring on it. I would use it because it's really quick to set up and it doesn't have all this tail and stuff. But same setup, you would rig off, it would fall into it there, and now it's running onto the ring instead. You can see that there, right? So it runs down. This adds a little extra friction in the system, But what's happened now is the system's a lot stronger, and this all this rope stretched a bit, and it like soaked up and absorbed a lot of that shock load. The more rope, the more it would do that. And we've shared the load instead of sharing it on one side or the other. We know we're causing like compression into the log there to the center because of where the weight's being lowered, and it's sharing between the two. So it's a really nice technique to have. It works really, really well. I would suggest streamlining the setup because it could get time consuming if you were having to retie all this every single time. My suggestion would be switching this out, putting the ring there, and then doing that same setup and having this so you could just slide the system down, undo that midline, clip, and put it on each time and open it up. It would be quicker, but yeah, that is a really nice technique to use. If you've never tried it before, give it a shot on a good negative rig like spar that you do. And you need, it's almost shocking how much friction it creates on its own with that system and having all that extra rope. And so you need very few wraps on the bollard or porter wrap when you do it, which to me ended up being kind of shocking how much friction it actually made and how little we needed on the bollard when we did it. But yeah, it's a really nice technique to have. I like it, and I figured I would share. So we'll go back up, check some of these comments. The setup looks good. Yeah, it's a really clean looking setup. It's just additional rope and maybe one additional piece of rigging. But like I've had guys be like, that's unnecessary, that's way too much setup. If you set it up and you understand the setup, it becomes very quick and easy and isn't very hard. So, but it works really, really good. Would it be easier to slow it down with span rigging or the other way? It'll be easier to slow down with when you're span rigging because of the friction that whatever it is that you're using, whether you're using a carabiner on that span of rope or a rigging ring's probably going to create a little more because of the surface area that's going to rub as it travels on it. But a carabiner causes a lot of friction and it when it travels on the system. So it's a nice setup to have. You wouldn't have to have straps. You could simply just have yourself a little piece of rope with a carabiner and do it that way. It's just you choose how you like to do it. This could be your rigging setup, and you would just take the rest of that rope there and go tie your piece up each time, and maybe even leave yourself a little tag on it and rig it. But I would always suggest if you're going to do any rigging or anything, make sure it's a big steel beaner rated for an excessive amount. This thing's rated for 41 kilonewtons. Which is a lot. I don't know how much. I think a kilonewton's like a $1.50 or something like that, somewhere around there. So it's rated for a lot, I think. Span rigging uses a little more rope. Yeah, usually because you're rigging off two separate points. They're very similar. They're going to use a similar amount. It's just the only thing is the distance between the 2 points. I think it puzzled me originally, and it took me a little bit to really think about it. And I was so into learning all these techniques and just trying them and trying to figure them out and see what would it help me one day. And I spent a year or more just learning every technique that I could possibly see or come up with, and that was one of them, and it took me a while before I made the correlation between, oh, it's span rigging. Double whip rigging is span rigging just on a stem, a single stem. And it just, when it clicked there, I'm like, makes total sense. But it seems so complicated originally. Span rigging doesn't seem complicated because everything's not clustered all up onto one stem and look confusing. Span rigging spread out. It's 2 points, one clip on. Seems very clean. When you start mashing all that stuff onto one stem, it looks very convoluted and looks a little excessive. And it's not. It's span rigging. So I think for some of the people that think double whip silly and crazy and this and that, if you just understand that it is span rigging on a single stem, you start to understand, oh, it could be useful. Okay, yeah, we're introducing all that extra rope. It's going to absorb. Yeah, okay. So I don't know. I got some silly comments when I posted it, like, those guys that say, you should have just cut her down from the ground. There looked like there was space. I really do like the setup though, Dan. It's a fun setup to use, and you kind of develop a little more knowledge on rigging rings and knowing where they can be used. The the smoothness that things could be ran with excessive amounts of weight was unreal to me. The video at that time, I think I was using like a different viewpoint on my GoPros. They were really old GoPros too, and it was that crazy wide angle lens view that I was using. And in the video, the sections don't look that big. They were big, and it was just like Bud Reach time, just boom, boom, boom. And I was like, wow, okay. Well, not every time. The first one, I got rocked. Like he locked it up. Bam! It slammed into it, and I got shaken. And then he started feeding rope. Way too many wraps, So it got. I think on most of those, where he probably would have been using close to 2 wraps, we were using like a half wrap because of all the extra friction that we were getting up in the tree and into the ropes and the stretching the ropes and stuff. So it's a great technique, especially if you sometimes you just want to rig big and hurry up. I want I want to try them techniques out when it's not in a life or death, you could tear something up situation. I'm gonna practice them. I'm gonna use them in a scenario that's maybe not like I could maybe regular rig, but I have to rig anyway. So instead, I'm gonna do this. It's easier. I think it's always going to be easier on your ropes. But I mean, you can make your own decision. You can do it whichever way you want. There's a billion different ways to skin the cat. The cat being the tree. And there's no right or wrong way of doing it. I've seen guys make the silliest, stupidest looking cuts to cut a tree down, but it was perfect. It went exactly the way he said it was going to go. There was no face cut. There was just a straight undercut where he plunged and then he came in on the sides. And apparently he says that's the way that you do walnut trees and you keep from cracking the stump and pulling fiber and stuff. So, hey, he probably knows. I don't do that stuff. I don't go out and try to collect log and need every bit of that log. When I'm sending a log, I'm trying not to smash anything with it. I don't give a damn what happens to the log. So it's a different avenue, and he has different techniques that to me look silly and uncontrolled. But in his lane, it's good and is effective and almost better. So it just depends on what you're doing, man. Yeah, Dan, it's really good with the when you're getting into that heavy wood, having that additional rope that stretches and absorbs some of that shock load, and you know, it's if you just ever been kind of freaked out, I want, when I'm rigging, I want a setup that can be as dialed in as possible. Now, I don't use uh, pulleys when I'm doing negative rigging because I don't think you can dial them in the way that you can dial in on a ring. A ring is a constant amount every single time, and it actually helps. A pulley holds it in place, but it's not helping stopping that tree. It's moving, it's giving a mechanical advantage almost. It's actually stretching your rope further than it would probably in a normal crotch. It's not as abrasive, but the addition of that center sheave and the mechanical advantage that it gives, moving so fast and smooth, it stretches your ropes even more. So it makes it even heavier if you're using a pulley. That's the reason I've always stuck to using rings, because they're not giving a mechanical advantage. They're giving you friction. Friction is your friend when you're negative rigging, and they're a single piece. They can't fall apart. They're strong. They're much cheaper, but you can get really dialed in. And when I'm climbing and a guy's rigging and I'm doing stuff like that, I want it to be so incredibly dialed in for him that he knows to the half wrap what to take. So every single limb and chunk of wood is just buttery smooth for me as far as the ride goes. And without that, you can turn a good day into a headache. So I'm always trying to dial that system in as smooth as I possibly can. So that's probably my main reason why I learned that technique. Ground pounder, what's up, brother? On my way home from fishing. Catch anything? Have crap signal? Right on. It's pouring right now here. It sucks. I hate the rain. I hate it so much. But yeah, I put out a couple videos. I don't know if you guys seen them. Um, the Brad Prepare stuff. That I was almost gonna trash that footage because I was like, I didn't even look at it. I just knew it was a Bradford, and I'm like, dude, that's boring. Like, it's not. I was just gonna like toss it away, but then I got to looking at some of it, and I'm like, well, it's not that bad. And plus, like, I could show in some of the areas on that tree, I would be on the stem down there would be like this, but a tear out had happened. It had lost half, so it was like a limb that should be this big was only about that thick, and then it got fat again and went up from where the tear out happened. So legit, it felt like sometimes I put the camera up on one of them stems. I did a bunch of cutting and rigging, and it was just that stem that was left, and the camera had went dead. Maybe it had one dead yet. I thought it had. So I was like, I was just gonna like wait to the end, but I'm like, I gotta go up there and get that. I'm glad I didn't wait to the end because after everything else was gone, that slim little noodle like pole that I put the thing, I was like, I was so nervous when I was up on it, and I was like reaching just tips of my fingers to try to get a hold of the camera, so I didn't have to climb up any higher on it. It's always incredibly sketchy. I actually had an accident in one of them trees a long time ago. I think I was probably a teenager at the time. Maybe I was in my early 20s. But yeah, I'll tell you guys that. I I get into this good sized Bradford pear. It was a juvenile for the most part. Definitely not a full grown one because I've been in Bradfords that have been like 40, 50 foot tall, like huge ones. So they get big. But this one was probably, I don't know, 25 foot, maybe 20, 20 to 25. and it was a real tight one. I actually think it could have been a Cleveland pear by the way it looks. They make they make a Bradford pear, which is very spread out. It's usually a single stem. It gets that low lying V syndrome where it gets this little bitty trunk that's not very tall, and then it gets a bunch of foliage, and that little bitty stubby trunk has to support all this crazy high amount tall foliage. That's why they fail a lot of times. So a Bradford's really wide open. It'll go up like the stump and it just spreads out everywhere, and then they kind of grow up. A Cleveland, on the other hand, the limbs are really tight together, and they've basically morphed a Bradford pear because of the flaws that it has in separating and breaking and falling apart. If you know a Bradford, usually they don't break just a single limb, they'll break a whole half of the tree out or like a huge section of the tree. A lot of times, if they're full of leaves and like green at the time, you can start to see before it breaks, you'll start to see sunlight through it, like where the sections are starting to separate. That's a tell sign that it's about to break. Check some of the seams. But I was up in this tree. I get up into it. I'm actually, it was early on. I didn't record nothing at that time. I didn't even know about any of that stuff. I was just, I was just cutting. Like, I got up into it, and I think I was only using a lanyard. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I had a climb line on me, but it was so tight up in this thing, I could barely move, and I had like cut my a path up through it. And I remember being like almost claustrophobic. It was like closed in on me. When you get inside of them, you get them cleaned up. It's like you're closed in. There's no air inside them things. It was a hot day, and I remember cutting, and I was lanyard in, and I think we were just doing a full crown reduction on it and keeping it small. The guy wanted to keep it small. So I reach out to get one of the tops. And as I'm reaching over to get it, I'm like stretching onto my lanyard. That's my. Are you guys there? Oh, I lost everybody. Go figure. Alright, I'm gonna give it just a second to make sure it locks back in. My fault. My daughter called. I was gonna ignore the phone call, but I couldn't. I was worried something was wrong with her. And she just called to ask me if I know this person. And I'm like, dang it, my live feed just got shut down. I thought there was something wrong with you. And she's like, no, I was just wondering. Like a kid. So, sorry. I apologize. But I had to answer that. If not, I would have spazzed out and I would have ended the live feed. I probably would have instantly ended the live feed because I would have got stressing about what she was calling for. So this way we could at least finish the story up, and we'll go from there. But at least I still got Billy here. Here, Billy, let's finish this story up. So I get up into the Bradford, and it's in this little, like, there's a rocky, like, it's a bunch of gravel that's laid down, but this little like walk-in area. It's got these like wood fence posts, like old style, the quartered up logs, and the logs are like weaved. It's that cool old style fencing, but it kind of borders everything. And then these two little Bradfords are kind of in there with it, and a bunch of bushes are all around. But mainly it's just rock, and there's a little walkway through it, like a little bench. So I reach out. I reach as far out as I could reach. What's up, Dan? Sorry about that, guys. I reach as far as I can reach, and like I almost get it, and I'm like, dang it. So I like bouncing to try, because in these Bradfords you could get some play. You can get them to swing like a little. They'll sway a lot, and I just couldn't quite get there. So I reach up real quick, and I at the time I was using an old school lanyard, so just a taut line or Blake's hitch kind of one. So I bump it and like pull it together and extend my lanyard out. When my lanyard extended out, I started reaching already back out to cut. And I reach and I just feel myself like originally when I reached, okay, let's do this. When I reached, my arm wouldn't quite get there. Okay, my saw would go right by the limb. So I bump myself out a little bit, and then I go to reach, and as I'm reaching, holy smokes! Like I'm getting the the limb that I was lanyard around, the whole half of the tree broke, and I didn't realize it. I just as I'm going like this, I realize and I go to look back, and I don't remember anything. Okay, I end up falling probably 15 foot maybe onto some gravel, and there's an ornamental rock that was there. It had something like a little plaque on it or something. I don't know. It was probably embedded on my forehead afterwards. But I hit my head on the rock, and it knocked me out cold. Um, at that time, I don't think I was wearing. I didn't even wear a hard hat. You know, I was just like, I just didn't know any better. But I get knocked out, and I'm there with with some family, and they're in the front working on a different tree, and I wake up, and I don't know where I'm at, and I have leaves all over my like in my face and on me, and I start I start to come to, and I'm like, oh my god, get off me, and I'm swatting and pushing and kicking, and I'm stuck, like I couldn't get it off me. And I started freaking out and spazzing, and all of a sudden I look down and I realize I have a climbing saddle on. And I'm like, what the hell? And I unclick the lanyard and I wiggle myself out and flip it off, and I stand up. And about that time I can see a little bit of blood coming down my head. And I'm like, I didn't know where I was at. And I look over and I see the tree, and it's now a half a tree. Half of the tree is laying there, and it had landed on top of me. Because I wasn't like in the center, I was on an outer limb, and I had to work my way around on them outer limbs so that I could reach the center and then get the outer stuff. So I was on more of an outer limb. It ended up taking half the tree with it, and yeah, bad situation. I was knocked out, and I didn't know what had happened. I woke up to my chainsaw running next to me and a bunch of leaves in my face. And I finally got myself out, shut the chainsaw off, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? And I started putting two and two together, and then I noticed that my head's bleeding. My dad came around, and he's like, what happened? And I was like, I don't know, I think I fell. The tree broke. And he's like, oh my God. So I checked my head and made sure that I didn't need stitches or anything. And it was really, really hot out that day, I remember too. So I just poured like some cold water on my head, put a little bandage on my head, and went back up it and finished it. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in Bradford pear as far as structure and strength. I see that tree failed more than any other tree in this world. It fails more than any other tree I've ever seen. So I don't have a lot of faith in them, and it's never really fun to climb them really tall, lanky ones, especially if they've ever been topped or something, because then the new growth and the old growth, the original growth, the grain patterns never match up, and them unions are never as strong as a natural union, so or as an original union, but. Well, right on. Yeah, definitely got to answer it, Billy and John. Like, I would have spazzed on it afterwards. But, yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I didn't mean to run everybody off, but I guess I did. But, yeah, that is, that's another hour. We did another hour. Do you guys have something you want to discuss? I'm down. Other than that, I was thinking about doing a, Did you guys like, actually, here, this is what I'll do. Did you guys enjoy the look back videos where I go take old footage and then do a voiceover and an explanation on it? Because I have a job that was a gnarly pine tree. It was like on this fish pond waterfall porch, like two porches, and like up against the building, and you couldn't touch anything. But and it was a pretty fun one. I stumbled across it in my my old downloaded stuff and videos I had made. I think it's probably like a 6 minute video or so. But yeah, I was thinking about doing a voiceover on it, and if you guys enjoyed those, I can uh, I can maybe put out a little extra content because those don't take me as long to make at all. They're already made, and I can just do a voiceover and explanation on them. But even when I do that, I'm probably gonna watch that video 10 times and do notes the first time on what I was thinking because I'll need to kind of deaden the audio because there's a lot of I feel like I have some of my very best videos that I've ever done were copyright claimed and I've made them private. So I want to go back and get those videos and do voiceovers on them so you guys can get to see the videos because right now I had to make them private because they were like giving me copyright strikes. So yeah, maybe I'll do that, and if you guys like it, I'm definitely down to do those more often, and it's some extra content. So um, other than that, that'd be cool. Billy, Dan, cool. Yeah, I'll work on that. Maybe I'll get that out to you guys. Maybe I'll get it out to you Monday. How's that? Like something to start the week. Because I just put two videos out pretty close together. They did shitty on the views, but it is what it is. What can you do? There's 90 million people doing tree work videos now. I'm just one of them guys. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I appreciate you a lot. Um, if you don't mind, hit that thumb thing. It would make it a little better for me. If not, I don't. It's not that big of a deal. Also, if you watch my content on the regular and you don't mind, hit the subscribe button. Also, yeah, you don't have to do that either. And just to tell you what you have to do, have a good night and be nice to people. Be safe. Have a good one. I'll catch you next time.